الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وصلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah, and only by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are able to continue this tremendous series, which we have titled Mental Health in a Nutshell. And this is our sixth installment, or sixth class, if you will, or sixth discussion, where we're going to talk about the intellect as discussed in psychology. And we're going to look at the complexities of the aql, all right, as is understood by different sciences, as well as the Western approach to the intellect, and as well as the Islamic approach. And I have many different definitions. So we're going to do a little bit, if we can, an in-depth understanding of the aql, because it plays a direct role when we deal with psychology and when we deal with mental health. Okay, so what is the aql? How is the aql to be understood? First and foremost, in contemporary psychology, intelligent is defined as the ability to learn from previous experiences, to solve problems, and to use knowledge to manage novel situations. Okay? While both genetics and environment have an influence upon intelligence, genetics seems to be a stronger factor based upon research studies. The intelligent quotient, which we famously known as the IQ, okay, is an individual score on a test that assesses the intellectual abilities in the areas of general knowledge, comprehension, vocabulary, arithmetic, reasoning, working memory, perceptual organization, and processing speed. Scores on intelligent tests are fairly stable and consistent across the lifespan, particularly after the age of 7 years. All right, this is a Western approach to how they look at and study the intellect. They use what we call the IQ system, as you see, and they study general knowledge basis things is what we're saying. This is defined in contemporary psychology, how they approach the issue of the intellect. You will find it interesting, though, when we get to the Islamic approach to the intellect. It's a little bit more complex than that. It's just not just all those areas, but it's a little bit more. Okay, so when dealing with this, another popular contemporary theory of intelligence is Gardner's theory of multiple intelligence. Gardner proposes that we have 8 different intelligences, each relatively independent of the others. This theory goes beyond the previously mentioned standard intelligence tests that primarily focus on verbal and mathematical aptitudes. Each individual is strong in certain of these intelligence, while weaker in others. Of the 8 multiple intelligence, these 7 are relevant to our discussion. Okay, I want to mention those intelligent, then I will move on, inshallah ta'ala, to the Islamic framework to psychology. So Gardner proposes that we have multiple intelligence. Okay, and it's not to rule out the fact that we can call each of those things a part or a level or a part of or component of intelligence. So I can see here what Gardner is actually doing. So he says a linguistic ability to use language is one of the 8. Sensitivity to the order of things. Okay, so language is a form of intelligence. All right, language is a form of intelligence. According to Gardner, he said that there's about 8 of them. And another one is called logical, which uses mathematical, intelligence of numbers and logic, ability to handle change, reasoning, and to recognize patterns and order. He has what he called musical, sensitivity to pitch, melody, rhythm, and tone. Bodily ability to use the body skillfully and handle objects adeptly. And spatial, ability to perceive the world accurately and to recreate or transfer aspects of that world. Interpersonal, ability to understand the people and relationships. And interpersonal, access to one's emotional life as a means of understanding oneself and others. So these things here he used as the multiple he proposes the multiple different parts of intelligence, and these are the things that Gardner poses. Like we said, alhamdulillah, as we said, this is a complex actually thing, and the reason why we say it's complex because even the data that we have on intelligence and what aql actually is, okay, it's still going to have to be, it's still something which we didn't create ourselves. Allah Jalla created the human being, and He created the aql of each human being. Okay, so you have to understand that this is kind of like a little bit different. So it's interesting enough how Islam approaches this. You're going to see the difference here. In the lab, we're going to talk about aql. Okay, so according to Islam, the way that they approach the intellect, the term al-aql is derived from the verb aqala yaqilu, okay, meaning reasoning, rationality, intellect or intelligence. The antonym of which is al-humqa, okay, which is al-humaqa, or which is stupidity or foolishness. All right, Al-Anbi, a famous Arabic language scholar, when he was linguistic, said that the aqlu, the intelligent or sane wise person, is the one who fastens upon his ideas and actions after careful excogitation, derived from one statement. Okay, akaltul ba'ir, which means I bound the camel with rope. Okay, this is called iqal. Okay, akaltul ba'ir. Sort of like what they wear, like when you see the tribe with different parts, normally what they wear over there, when they have the shimag on, you see them have that ring, that double ring. That's a tribal thing anyway. But when they have that double ring, it's called an iqal, okay? Still around, still with the language is still connected with aql. I mean, you understand. So we're talking about how they approach it. This is how the Muslim scholars approach the issue of aql. We're going to go into some more deep stuff about it. We're not even done. Okay, so now that we have this, we have Ibn Mundhir. Za'alaba has further elaborated this meaning, stating that the synonym of aql is al-mani', meaning the act of preventing, withholding, or restraining something from one saying. Okay? Was one say when he restrained the she camel. Al-aql, therefore, is the one who withholds or restrains himself from doing that which is not suitable and befitting. Now, I want you to look at the two differences here. So, one aql is what? Understanding things, okay, having the knowledge, perceiving the understanding information, and then how to act upon that knowledge. And then another thing is how to restrain, to withhold yourself or prevent yourself from further going into different things. So you see that you can see the different approaches here on aql. We're going to get to all of this is going to be summed up. All right. The earlier Muslim scholars from among the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, their disciples all gave various but related meanings to al-aql, which are summarized by Ibn al-Jawzi in his book Al-Azkiyah to only 4. Okay, so he summarized these different opinions that was said or stated by the companions and also from their students, the Tabi'i, and he compartmentalized or summarized it into 4 different components. He said the first meaning is that which is used to describe the innate property of a person wherewith man is prepared to receive, understand, and synthesize information as what distinguishes him from other living animals. That's the first one, okay? This is the purport of what scholars such as Imam Ahmed and Al-Muhabisi stated, who respectively describe al-aql as an innate property of ghariza of man, or inborn light, nur, by which one is prepared to perceive things. Okay, so it's something as an innate quality. All right, is a ghariza. This is something as an innate quality that allows the man to be distinguished from what to perceive, to receive, and to be distinguished from the other different animals. Okay, the second meaning implies that which is used to designate self-evident things. All right, the axiomatic truth, ilm al-dururi, in which both intelligent and do-witted people are on par with one another. The third meaning of al-aql cited by him is that which is gained through experience and newly acquired experience is called al-aql. Well, no, it's called aql, all right? So pretty much you can see the similarities between the contemporary understanding of intellect as well as some of the things here. So some of these meanings cross-reference over, as you see as the contemporary intellect in regards to contemporary psychology is that it is about what perceived experience, what a person experiences, that plays a major role into a person's intelligence. So also you can see some cross reference here. But the fourth one is, the last meaning implies the inherent principle by which one restrains his own self from his heart's vain desire. Okay, Ibn al-Jawzi. And this is important, right? Because in the Quran, Allah Jalla wa Ala tells us the stories of the people of the past. All right. And from the stories of the people of the past, he tells us about Lut. All right, Qawm Lut, the people of Lut. And interestingly enough, in different verses, Allah Jalla wa Ala mentions about their behavior. We already know what their main behavior was. We already know what they was already partaking in. But notice how when Lut would address his people, he would mention to his people, Alaysa minkum rajulun rashid. All right. So why is he appealing to their aql? All right. Even though they are what? They are individuals who are given into their desires. And their main desires, they preferred men over women. They practice sodomy. Okay. So, and even in that, he still appealed to their aql, which shows you here, if you look at even at the last meaning, all right, it shows you here that what? That last meaning, as we said, as he mentioned, is what? Is to restrain from the heart's vain desires. So we know the desire of, what they were doing, that was a desire. And the seat of desires is the heart, no doubt. And we'll get into that a little bit later about how complex it was. That's why I keep using the word complex, because the aql just not resides in the brain. And I think we established that before. Okay, so it's not something just, in the dimag. It's actually more complex than that. But still, even if you look at it, he says, Alaysa minkum rajulun rashid. He says, is there not a single right-minded man amongst you? All right. Why is he appealing to their reasoning, to their aql? Because something within the intelligence should have to alert them what? And we have to look at the word he used. He used rashid, which is rushd. All right. Rush and aql. Okay. Understanding rush a little bit is that you have to understand that there are two forms or two types of rush. You have a person who is a rashid, Rashid Austin. What that is husn tasarruf. Okay, for example, individual, when it comes to money, he definitely can manage the money. He actually knows how to proportionally maintain, keeping accounts. He knows that which goes in, that which goes out. He understands it clearly. So he has rush when it comes to that. He has ihsan. Then you have a person who has rush in the deen. And when he has rush in the deen, he's istiqamatu ala dinillah. Okay, he's well-grounded and well-firmed and standing upright when it comes to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and carrying out those things which he has been commanded with. So when you look at it, your aql has a component in it which supposed to prevent you, al-mani', as we said in one of the second meaning, is supposed to prevent you from following your vain desires. So if your aql is supposed to play a part in that, then it's just not left to just mathematics, arithmetic, processing. No, it's less to do with something as a managing thing, something that manages you and prevents you from doing things that you ain't supposed to be doing. So that aql has a role in that. I want you to see that connection there. Supposed to prevent you. This is why Islamic scholars go a little bit deep when they talk about people being aql, a person being intelligent. They don't call anyone just intelligent because he possessed a brain or faculty, all right, or that he can reason or process. That reason had to be based on something. And that's what you get ready to see here. They says what? So it breaks down here. Ibn al-Jawzi, in view of these meanings, al-aql generally centers on two things: the knowledge of merit and demerit of things, as we talked about, what's good and what's right. Okay, what you be rewarded for, what you not be rewarded for, what you understand to be evil, what you understand to be good. That's the merit or demerit of things. That's one component of the aql. All right. Another thing is, but refuse to act upon the knowledge acquired by him is not wise. Central to the knowledge and merit of things, and then act upon that knowledge. All right. A person who grasps the perfectness and the defectness of things, meaning he knows what this is right, or this is sound, or this is unsound, this is healthy, or this is unhealthy, this is good, or this is bad. He knows these things. He can process that. He can distinguish between them, but he fails to actually implement it. So he don't stay away from something that's unhealthy, unsound, or bad. He actually doesn't do it. So in this regard, this individual who does that, who fails to do that, this person cannot be given the term al-aql, the intelligent one. You understand? He's not known as an Akal. He's not known as a person intelligent one because he did not what? He failed to implement what he already, the knowledge that he had. He failed to implement that understanding. If it's bad, he should have stayed away from it. If it was good, he could have proceed with it. So this is the reason why scholars, they use that person as comprehensive there. Okay, it says the term al-aql, therefore may not completely suit him. To this end, the aql implies the intellectual ability to comprehend evidence of factual knowledge and an information or message received or discovered. It is used to also distinguish wisdom from folly, which is the ability of man to be guided by the rule of wisdom. What makes a person do right versus what makes a person do wrong. Okay? And we're going to talk about another component of aql which contemporary psychology leaves out. And that is the driving force of wahi, of revelation. All right, which is a major component. You can't really leave that out. Tight, let's move on a little bit more. There is a philosophical meaning of aql. I'm not going to delve too deeply into this, but I want you to understand when you look at the Western approach to psychology and they talk about the intellect, they use a lot of the psychologists uses the understanding from a philosophical approach. And that may or may not be healthy, as we're going to see. Aql, often dubbed by philosophers, is called reason or intellect. Okay, many of the philosophers they actually use it. Okay, on which many theories have been recorded. However, their views were very permutation of poor philosophical observations, the result of which raised more questions than the evidence of facts. Because they really didn't understand the component of aql, they based mainly thing on what? They had to become, it left more questions than it left actually facts. In other words, meaning that every time they came across something new, they had to discover it, they had to actually question that, be inquisitive to understand what that is. And they based it, most of this, on empirical information, sensory, what I can observe, what I can see, rationalness. And it's more stuff that they based it on, as you're going to see with Aristotle, what he has done. So however, their views were very mentioned. According to Aristotle, there are two types of aql, the practical intellect and the theoretical intellect. The former partakes of decisions and conclusions of what to be done through reflection and reasoning. This is the practical one, according to Aristotle, progressing from the lower to a higher stage. The latter, on the other hand, which is the theoretical, deals with philosophical reason put forth to explain facts of knowledge, including the area of metaphysics. Okay, the area of metaphysics. And those who don't know, metaphysics still extends to what we call the unseen. Okay, some things which cannot be conceptualized by the human intellect, some things which cannot be perceived. And they use different routes to achieve this understanding. And it does make you feel as though you are really touching on something. I mean, you really, look, you're studying the cosmos, okay? You're studying the cosmos, you're studying different things, and you feel as though by you studying nature, you're going on all these different things, but the reality that must kick in is you didn't create those things. So you would never fully understand those things unless the creator comes down and reveal to you certain things about it or tell you about it. If you didn't play a part in the process of those things, how can you really, you can observe and study what you can see from your sensories, but there are some things definitely going to be hidden from you. So you're not going to be authoritative in that. So the best you're going to do at most is you're going to start to surmise and guess, you see, and make up things, then base conclusion off of that. And this is a theoretical approach to what they call intellect. And they base theories off of this, and then beliefs start to come off of this. And this is something that is dangerous. Because first and foremost, think about it. The whole concept of the us being born in different months, right? Your birth month. And then they use the astronomical where they, Nostradamus, things like that, where predict what type of personality you're going to have, what type of person you are based off the month you were born. Astronomical, right? Based off the stars. You see where I'm going with that? That's dangerous. That's dangerous. None of that can actually prove what type of person you are because you was born in a certain month. And you have Muslims to this day. Wallah, you do. Yeah, Muslims to this day, man, they don't understand the horoscopes. They're reading horoscopes. And they talk. You have the Muslims talking as if, yeah, I'm a Pisces. I'm an Aries. This is the way I behave. And what goes in the newspaper, this seems to be true. Y'all lie. Like, you don't understand. They don't understand the intricate details of that. That's like, you don't understand that you cannot attribute your personality, and we're going to get into personality in this series, but you cannot attribute your personality to a star, and to what month you were born, and it got nothing to do with your personality. I mean, you can't connect those two. And then furthermore, it's like an insult to your creator because he created you. And then you are striving the birth one to how you're going to be and how you perceive. And somebody in the newspaper write out that these are the qualities and the traits of the people that were born in April and the people that were born in May. They are this. And the people that were born in July, they are this. And this is all astronomical information. Forget the fact that the Prophet ﷺ already said whoever reads horoscopes, whoever goes to a fortune teller and so forth, they don't believe in what Muhammad ﷺ believed, and they actually disbelieve in that which Muhammad ﷺ. Just forget that fact right there, which is actually crucial and major in and of itself. It just lets you know that we as human beings cannot rely on a puny misunderstanding of what the Aql actually is. And that intellectual process needs to be comforted and actually guided by wahi, revelation, because if it's left unguided by that revelation, it would tread in dangerous waters, which will lead it astray. This is why the Aql in and of itself was never left as the major component to guide you to that which is correct or incorrect. On its own, yes, it has a faculty within it to recognize what's right and what's wrong, but it wasn't the sole factor that guided you to what's right and what's wrong. Henceforth, Allah sent revelation. Because human beings on their own wouldn't have got it. If it was left without no revelation, they wouldn't have got it. Period. They wouldn't have got it. So they get it better with the revelation sound because the revelation and sound Aql goes together. You understand? And this is what scholars of the past debated about, as we should see. This is what they were talking about. It's a lot of the people with rhetoric, stuff like that. They were debating about these issues. They were going in detail. And then you get a better appreciation of what the Quran is and what the Sunnah is when you see that these topics are actually taught or discussed. So we understand that metaphysics, okay, it tries to address things in terms of their ontological and cosmological nature. Aristotle was explaining the nature and the evolution of the universe. Now think about this. Aristotle was telling us about the evolution of the universe, how the universe was actually composed, how it actually developed, how it came about. Who is Aristotle? Was he there when it was created? Did he have a part in the process of creating it? How can he have keen insight on how the cosmos was actually created? I don't care what you study. How would you have that information? Think. This is why Allah Jalla wa Ala, he's the one in that realm. He's the only one who can talk about how the cosmos actually brought about, the development of it. He's the only one who can talk about it. He's the only one who created it. And he's the only one who has the sole knowledge of that thing. And you might say, well, how can we argue that, a being is this or that, and we can see from here, this period. He's the sole one that can actually does it. And there's many things that can remove that doubt. This is not the proven or the existence. This is why one of the major components of every philosophical school out there, you think about it, they always try to prove the theory or the existence of God. That shouldn't be an argument, but that's something that they want to prove. They want to prove that God exists. You understand? The believer doesn't need to prove that God exists. All right? There are multiple components that already let you know that God exists. But that's one of their things. One of their creeds, many of the philosophical creeds, is that they want to prove the existence, the wujudullah. Okay? That Allah actually exists. And they base this component off of doubt first, not off of the fact that he actually does. The mere fact that you're alive, the mere fact that you can even comprehend, one of the things they call multiple intelligence from Gardner's proposed theory about multiple intelligence, about language. Allah used that in the Quran. Do they not see the way that they speak? Do they not have any clear insight of that? Why is Allah calling out the fact that you can speak? That's a sign or alama that what? You didn't come up with that ability. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created that ability. And by giving you that ability, that points to the fact that you have a creator. Allah says, وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ, do they not look within their own selves? So that makes your physical anatomy, the different things and components that you have within you. There's also alama that Allah says. Allah Jalla used multiple different things throughout the Quran to show you over and over and over the proof of your existence. Meaning the proof of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being one and that he created you. You understand? So that is already there. The Muslim doesn't need to go into these philosophical debates trying to figure out, can we prove the existence of God? The fact that we can speak and talk is the proof that God exists. All right? And you might don't think this got nothing to do with psychology, but it has a lot to do with psychology. You understand? It has a lot to do with psychology because you have to make sure whatever you're going to base off dealing with people mental problems or their psychological state, you have to base it from a sound source. All right, a source that will understand intricately what is inside a human being, what is the components of a human being, what influences a human being, what all of these different things, how a human being behave, how a human being interact. You can study the outward appearance of things. As Allah says, Ya'lamuna zahira what? Hayata dunya. They only know the outward aspects of things. They don't know the mawatan. They don't know the intricate inner stuff things. And they neglect those things because they don't know it. They deny those things because they can't prove it to themselves. So they deny the ruh and they neglects it. There's no spirit, there's no soul. So we don't discuss those issues, but they play a major impact in your psychology. But they neglect that because they can't prove it. So they neglect also other things, the fitra. They neglect other things, the complex of the intellect in and of itself. Where is the intellect actually at? What is divide? Is it all from trajectory of the senses? I mean, neurotics, as we get ready to talk about that. Is it all neurotic? Is it all just from the brain? Or does the heart play a part in it? Okay, I want you to look at it. We're going to mention some studies that they are showing now, even though they can't prove. They're showing that the intellect is not just with the brain. All right, something that Revelation been telling us for years now. The intellect is not just something with the brain. Okay, but this is what you'll see. So just hook it up here. This is what you see. A lot of them talking about these different issues. So the philosophical approach of the intellect is something that we see is premature at the best, and it leaves nothing but more speculation. It's not certain. All right. The meaning of aql, okay, in the Quran. All right. According to the Quran and the Sunnah, the interpretation of the early religious scholars of Islam from among the companions and their disciples is not an abstract entity from the material world as observed by philosophers. Rather, it is a quality, property, power, and capacity of reasoning and intellection in a particular person. Intellection becomes perfect when person reasons things and then act upon what he reasons. They are two components. Have you noticed in the Quran, Allah says, Inna ladina amanu wa amilu salihat. Allah connects belief and actions, right? So the intelligent person, once he processes the information, understands the information, acting on that information is, you understand? They go hand in hand. Acting on that information goes hand to hand. Right? Now, so it becomes crystal clear. F1. Now, so moving on. He says, a naive person who acted contrary to his knowledge deserves not to be called aql, wise, or intelligent. Ibn Taymiyyah. It is stated in the Quran referring to such people, and they will say, have we what? As Allah Jalla wa'ala mentioned about the people of hellfire, they're going to say that have we not? Law kunna nasma'u aw na'aqilu. Have we listened and used our aql, na'aqilu, right? We should not have been among the dwellers of the fire. Okay? That's sort of from the above verses, the aql implies inherent nature, quality, and person. Okay? And this is the last thing we're going to bring up in here. So from the above verse, aql implies inherent nature and quality and person given to him by Allah Jalla wa'ala, by which he acquires knowledge of that which is sound and that which is unsound. His actions in regards to this as guided by the rule of wisdom. Aql should not imply what philosopher speaks of abstract intellects. It is illusions and conjecture of the peripatetic philosophy, diving without guidance. There are divergent opinions between scholars of Islam concerning the anatomical seat of intellect, meaning where does the actual intellect lodge? Where is it seated at? Is it in the brain? Is it in the heart? Scholars of the past actually debated about this. They argue over this. Tayyib, as we should see, inshallah. So where do the actual intellect lies? That's basically what he's saying there. All right. Imam Abu Hanifa and his school considered brain to be centrally the organ of intellect. All right. The brain. So according to Abu Hanifa, he took the view that the brain was the central seat or the central organ for that intellect. All right. This is also one of the narrated opinion of Ibn Ahmad ibn Hanbal, although many Hanbali schools of jurisprudence consider that the function be certainly in the heart instead. It is also narrated view of Imam Shafi, basing their proofs from the chapter Surah Hajj, chapter 22, verse 46, quoted earlier, and other verses such as, rather there's a deed of reminder for him who has a heart or ear. According to these scholars, the heart was used to designate intellection simply because it is its seat. Ibn al-Jawzi. In the same vein, it is worth mentioning that the debate on this matter is not only an issue between religious scholars, as it can be also traced back to ancient civilizations such as Egypt, all right, all regarding the heart to be indeed the organ of intellect. The two contradictory ideas again continue to be matter of debate between Greek philosophers and physicians. Aristotle was among those philosophers who argued that the heart is the century of sensation and knowledge. So I guess Aristotle also agreed with the Quran, right? Here that the heart plays a different role than what many people will actually think it does. It's not just this blood vessel, all right? It plays a more seated role. And this is an interesting topic because we're going to talk about psychology. We have to understand where does that intelligence come from? Where does it lie? So if I know that the brain isn't just the seat of it, then I'm not just going to focus on the brain. And if I know that the heart plays a role in it, then I'm going to focus on those things that which can help the heart. And also now I'm going to know why I'm going to have some more insight or in-depth knowledge why a person might be off balance. Why is it psychological disorders? Why do a person might do this? So now I know how to approach the issue a little bit different, okay? In contrast, it is widely considered to be there is a writer who's widely considered to be earliest writers who have championed the brain rather than the heart as the site of sensation and cognition. Gross, 1995. The view, which was later affirmed by modern neurosciences and scientific analysis of these theories, is not our concern. But due to the existence of such debate between Muslim scholars, we attempt to identify which view is supported by the Islamic legal text, beginning with the meaning of qalb in both Quran and Arabic language. So when we look at the word qalb, because it's used in Arabic language, it means the changing or turning of something, okay? Upside down. It is used to designate the heart in view of its nature of emotional changes. As in this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, the famous dua, Ya muqallib qulub, thabbit qalbi ala dinik, keep my heart firm, or change my heart firm, keep my heart firm upon your deen. Tirmidhi related. This meaning can also be extrapolated into the verse below when Allah says, and we shall muqallibu, and we should turn, nuqallibu, we should muqallibu, turn their hearts, change their hearts and eyes away from guidance. The term is also used to imply their inner side of, as a result, which is well before enclosing its interior. It's called qalb, Ibn Mandel. The inner side of a person may also be called qalb, al-insan, Ibn Taymiyyah. It is from this last meaning that some scholars incline to the assumption that the brain is the organ of intellect, since its place is also inside a person, in an attempt to reconcile the two opposing ideas. But this assumption is weak in terms of proof. From the primary meaning of al-qalb, whenever used to imply man, is heart. Okay, it is also called al-fu'ad, meaning the heart, due to its pulsation intensity. Though there is a slight difference in that the former is more specified than the latter, which signifies consisting of the liver, lungs, and the heart. All right. The interpretations to which scholars like Zakir incline, which is intelligence, thereby affirming the brain as the seat, is no point. This is because interpretations of such matters should take the cognizance of early hours from of meaning from the period of the Prophet ﷺ, but the early hours from among the period of the Prophet ﷺ, consider primarily to be the meaning of qalb. So in other words, he's basically saying that we can't use that because we got to go back to the Salaf. How did they understand the word qalb? And from the early Arabs, how did it be understood? So for us to make that claim, we have to at least go back and delve into what they actually, how they defined it and how they used it and how it was applied. He says also, furthermore, considering the views of the scientists, it has not been proven scientifically that the heart's role in the human body is merely pumping blood, nor is it proven that it has nothing to do with cognitive activities. We're talking about cognitive psychology here. We're talking about trying to understand a person's behavior, emotional, his state. Okay, we're trying to talk about how do we process information. All right, what information causes me to go to, we're thinking of that. So is the heart, does it play a role in that? Does the heart process those type of thoughts? Cognitive? Does it have sensation? Does it have feelings? This is what we're trying to discover here. So if we look in light of the text, the Quran and the Sunnah, what we got to base it on, then we'll see if there's some proof of that. Okay, so here, as a matter of fact, there are many scientists who talk about the neutrons in the heart, which provide the ability of thinking, sensing, and maintaining this operation. All right, Rahman and Hassan. It is not possible to localize memory. McCarthy, he said, it is not possible to localize memory to a neuron or a section of the neurons. Certain areas of brain centers are needed for coding and decoding, but memories themselves are distributed throughout the brain and the nervous system. So why will we draw a line to our throat and say memory does only take place in the brain? Okay, so here we can see that many of the people of the past, like McCarthy, who wasn't Muslim, understood that we could not just lock the brain down as the seat for intelligence, and that we can't say that the heart doesn't play no role in it. There's no proof that they have to say that the heart doesn't play. Actually, they were saying the opposite, that the heart does play a role in sensation, as we see. Okay, similarly, according to the research conducted by Dr. Andrew Amor in 1991, heart is said to be containing about 40,000 neutrons that create its compound circuitry, which enables it for the functionality of sensing, regulating, and remembering, to suffix qualifying it a sort of brain in its own sphere. Indeed, this evidence left to itself cannot completely downplay the significance of the brain, but may be served as the foundation upon which further research will be intensified. This will help the world intellectuals to understand how these two organs communicate, meaning the brain and the heart, with each other for managing our cognitive activities, how we perceive things, how we understand things. Is it a communication between the heart and the brain? Remember, we worked the statement of Ibn Taymiyyah earlier about that the actual akal touches is what? It touches the brain and it touches the heart. All right, remember the earlier scholars, this is what they believe about it. And this is, you can see from the non-believers, they are starting to see some here. Okay, McCarthy said there's information going. McCarthy also further says there's information going from the heart to the brain than the other way. And this information influences regions in the brain, and a major part of this information comes from the heart. So you can see that there is a communication being done between the heart and the brain. This changes things here now, because we got to know what affects the heart. We have to know what affects not just the brain, but the heart. So the IQ test, that's one level of understanding of the intelligence. But what about the heart? The heart has illnesses. So if it plays a direct role, it can muddle. And that's the reason why I brought the verse earlier to you about, think about this, the verse that I brought to you before about Lut. It was a reason why I brought that verse. I want you to see something. Why would Lut say to his people, there's not a single right-minded person among you? Because desires, which is the seat of the heart is the seat for desires. So desires is which lies in the heart. If that desire wants to be played out or carried out, it has the ability to what? To affect or influence the actual cognitive process of what is right, what is wrong, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, what's sound, what's unhealthy. It plays a direct role in that. So because they had this desire, this strong desire to do something that wasn't cool, because it was the first nation that ever did it, to practice sodomy and homosexuality and all that, right? So since they had that knack and desire to do that, that driving force, it actually muffled their rational sense. And their line of reasoning was actually what? It was mixed, it was contaminated. So they didn't see the harm in what they were doing. They didn't see it. They actually perceived what they were doing was correct, and they seen Lut as to be going. Why? Because the overwhelming desire became strong. So they threw reason out the door. All right, which shows you that there's a definite connection between reasoning and desires. And it also shows you that the heart plays a major component in that as well. And this is what we're talking about here. So to show you that psychologists would do better if they will do a lot more to improve to help people with their mental states if they understand all the components involved. So if they can take out the time to learn about the heart, those things that affect the heart, as well as those things that affect the brain, and try to reach something in between there to actually help out those things, it would definitely do a major contribution to it. As we see here, this is a non-believer, and he's actually affirming that the brain and the heart plays both roles in regards to understanding. So far from the scientific research, it is now well-established reality that emotions and personality, including one experience, beliefs, love, and ideas, are transferred as a result of heart transplant. This is interesting, right? These transfers of personality cases have been collected by various researchers. Take, for instance, Peter Halton, the earliest receiver of the artificial heart, who remained wistful about emotions, 2007. Okay, in the same ring, a happy married 69-year-old man living in Georgia committed a suicide upon receiving a transplanted heart from a man who died the same way, pretty much, who committed suicide. So he had got a transplanted heart from a suicide person. And they saying that heart affected that person in terms of caused this man who was happily married to be killed. This is researchers and data what they're saying as far as the transplanted heart. Another similar scenario happened to an 18-year-old boy who wrote poetry, played music, and composed songs. He died in a car accident after his heart was transplanted into an 18-year-old girl, Daniela by name. Some of his music was played in her presence. She was suddenly able to complete the lyrics despite never having heard it before. The question now is, if the brain is solely responsible for our thought and perception, then what is the scientific explanation of this phenomenon, in which memories and characters of the donor are transplanted along with their heart? It is clear from the above proof from those scholars who deny the heart's role as are just catching the shadow of, while at the same time losing the substance. So you have to understand that there is a direct correlation between them. You understand? This is why I say that the Akka is something that is complex. It is touched by both the brain and the heart. And it's not something that you just want to figure it out by doing a bunch of IQ tests and saying that, okay, this person can understand and reason, they can do math, and this person can do this, understand patterns and logic. So this person averagely should have a healthy mindset. It's not how it works. It's not how it works. Because you have to understand, when we get into all of that, different things and influences and affect certain things. In Islam, we're told that the emotional, intelligent being is the one who prefers that which is wholesome and good, all right, and sound and healthy over that which is unsound, unhealthy, all right. And then Allah focuses on reaching Him with a pure heart, and He used the heart as that catalyst that help us understand that that heart has the means, if it's affected, if it's conflicted, if it's diseased, it have the means to do what? To make us mentally unsound. It have the means to make us mentally unstable. It have the means to make us something where as though we're now not at that point. There's different components with that we have to look at when we want to start dealing with our own problems. And we have to process those problems. But we have to have a head start. And we did. Each human being has been equally distributed a head start in the dunya. Each human being has been given it. And you might say, what is that head start? It's called the fitra. Each human being that's born has been given a head start in the dunya. The fitra. That role of the fitra is to allow that human being to automatically submit to that which is good when it comes his way or her way. So once you receive that good, you can actually make a connection there. Okay, yes, the fitra, if it can be covered up, you can make a connection there. If you fail to make that connection, if you fail to hold on to that connection, you're now is allowing your heart to take you down a path that you should not be able to actually come out of. And you might think stable and being unstable got nothing to do with where you at financially, economically. Okay? Stable and unstable doesn't mean that. A person can be financially set, and have good management skills, but at the same time, suffer in other areas. Do you understand? That's not an overall picture that we should be looking at. You understand? We have to look at the soundness of a person's heart. What a person at the end of the day, right? If something happened to them, how do they process that information? How do they understand that information? What can I control versus what I cannot control? Major coping skills, and it helps you out a lot. Okay, what I control versus what I cannot control. If I can control this, all right, did I have a part in this? Did I not have a part in this? Then can it be salvaged? Is there a way to salvage this? All of these things is going to play a scenario in that. So if I cannot control it, then whose job is it? How do I deal with it? How do I hold on to it? There are key components which plays as a coping mechanism. We'll get into all of that, inshallah, that help you processes the internal, external struggles that you go through out life, which is guaranteed every person is going to go through, no matter who you are. You're going to go through a set of problems that are tailor-made for you. Henceforth, the qadr, which is another major component throughout the Quran and the Sunnah that tells you about your life, how it's going to actually make you, and all of this plays a role. So when people start to really realize that and really understand that, they can start working on themselves. You understand? Taking the process of working on yourself. This concept of change, this concept of there is no external changes that's going to change you internally. That's not how it works. Even the Quran tells you that. Inna Allah la yughayyiru what? Qawman hatta yughayyiru what? Anfusahum. Indeed, Allah doesn't change the condition of the state of the people until they change the condition of the state of themselves. Allah will tell you that. So internally, you have to play a role. It doesn't matter if a person is an addict or have an addiction, they have to internally want it, that willpower. They have to internally do it, this emotion, to change that role. It's an internal process, not an external one. So nothing externally, they can help you. They can play as things that help move you along the right road, but they don't have the ability in and of themselves to change you. They're not going to just change your state. That's an internal problem. And you have to make sure that you're sound all around the board so that you can make that right process. And that soundness comes from what the condition of your heart is. And that's why we as an Islamic framework of psychology, we try to study the whole picture. All right? The state of the ruh, the soul, the state of the fitra, the state of the aql, the state of the heart, which plays a direct role of that aql. Last but not least, I want to just finish this part with what Sheikh Islam Taymiyyah said. Those scholars who recognize or reconcile between the two organs communicating, all right, which is the heart. So, as explaining, perhaps the best thing is the supposition put forward by Ibn Taymiyyah, explaining that the cognition is related to both the heart and the brain. He said the foundation of will and decisions making is in the heart. The foundation of thought is in the brain. All right. He says, hold on. He said intellection comprises knowledge and being consistent with the knowledge, which are essentially controlled by the heart being the seat of will and desire. But the faculty by which one makes decision is from the brain. It therefore begins in the head as it visualizes the intelligible, and then it sends it to the heart to make the choice, to decide. This is a reasonable combination between the two opposing views. All right, that there is a direct correlation between the brain and the heart. And this is what we wanted to look at, intellect as discussed in psychology. So when a person, this is for psychologists now, for those in those areas. So when a person comes to you, you have to take in consideration these issues here, because how are they processing the information? How are they processing what happened? How are they processing reason? What is their cognitive emotional state? Well, it's an influx, and it goes between the brain and the heart. All right, it goes between the brain and the heart. A person can have a spiritual illness. A person can have a spiritual illness. All right, a person can have a defective illness. A spiritual illness versus then a physical illness. And that spiritual illness have influences to harm, all right, the physical, as we've seen in sins and its punishments, etc., all right, those different things. And this is how the scholars of Islam, because when they work with the revelation, this is how they understand these issues, because this is what the Quran and the Sunnah is actually pushing forth. As Allah says, And because what they have put forth with their own hands, their heart is affected with Iran. And the Prophet ﷺ said there's a black dot that appears on the heart. This is something that a psychologist can say, well, I can see it. I can't see the black dot, right? But the black dot appears on the heart. If the person commits a sin, that dot is there. If the person continues to cover, so this person don't feel no remorse, that this person don't feel no regret, that this person becomes heartless in terms of that, because that becomes a complete dead heart. So it doesn't care about right or wrong or matter. So then that means it plays a part into the intellect. Now the intelligence is fuzzy. Now the person is not going to be a Rajulun Rashid. He's not going to make sound choices because the heart has become covered and rusted. And then the Prophet ﷺ told us the opposite of that: seeking istighfar, seeking Allah's forgiveness, seeking pardon. That wipes away that black dot, and then it comes again, becomes healthy. So you're in the process of that. So if this is an affecting thing and it affects you, then think about that. You are in the situation you are in, the things and the problems you go through. Whether it was external or internal, you have to take a look at that. Some things you were born into. You might have been born into a parent that wasn't fully functional, that have put you and subjected you to stuff that you say, this is not what a normal parent should does. And that blame isn't on you. You understand? You got to remember, you are a trust to your parents. And if your parents felt that responsibility, Allah is going to bring them to charge. But how it shapes you, how it affects you, moving forward, you have to make sure you have a sound outlook on life. That sound outlook was given to you. You can never point your finger to the Creator and say He didn't give it to you. It's called a fitra. That sound outlook was the fitra. You have to understand that that's what it was. That beacon that zoom you right into when you hear the right information about the Creator, the oneness of Allah Azza wa Jal, the love of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, the oneness of the Creator, the compassion, those things. When you hear about that sound thing, that beacon goes, it zooms right in. But this is why the Prophet said what? He shows us, Ibn Taymiyyah explains the hadith about each of us born upon the natural fitra, and he shows you how the influence can happen from outside influences. And he mentioned also that the Prophet ﷺ, and I'm getting ready to stop here, brothers and sisters, sorry, that the Prophet ﷺ didn't mention the parents and saying that only the parents can be one of those influence. It can be anyone, but the parents is normally, in that case, it can be anyone that can cause an influence that can be an outside influence that would dim that beacon from actually seeing what it needs to see or reason what it needs to see to actually get there. So we ask Allah to allow us to become more better and stable beings, and understanding that stability has nothing to do with where you're at in your life. Stability has something to do with your heart. That's where stability comes from. If you have a stable heart, you have stability. Whether you're on top, whether you're down, you have stability. That's where it's at. The process comes here, the heart. So having that stability is going to come from the heart. Work on those things that's going to give you that soundness and peace of mind, which is the heart, inshallah ta'ala. Whoever said it was incorrect in any of our translation or any of our ad-libbing and everything that was actually incorrect or unintelligent, we know it's definitely from ourselves and shaitan, and perfection is only with Allah. Whatever happened that was good, did it come from Allah? Thank you all for tuning in. Subhanakallah wa bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Jazakallah khairan.